Let's welcome our today's guest, Dina. So, Dina, can you please tell us all like what you do and where have you been in your journey till now?
Okay, well, thank you, Vivek. I am a public speaking coach. I also am an etiquette instructor, but I primarily do the public speaking coaching these days. I've been doing it for almost 5 years now. My background is actually in engineering, and I have lived overseas. So I have an ability to really identify with non-native English speakers and STEM professionals, such as IT people, computer programmers, and engineers. So I tend to work primarily with them and provide the one-on-one coaching to them online.
Till now, we were conducting interviews for the people who train children. Now, you just said that you train the people who train children.
I do. I help them to be more confident in speaking. I work a lot with people who are actually uncomfortable working on Zoom because you don't get the feedback from the person that you're talking to, and it can be a little uncomfortable as well. So I actually do work a lot with people who train the other people.
Yep, that's actually awesome to know. So, what was the thinking process when you started this?
So I started this kind of almost out of the blue. As I mentioned, my background is engineering. I took some time off when I had children. It was going to be just 1 year after my second child. That grew, and I ended up moving overseas, coming back, homeschooling my daughter, whose English was actually lower than it should have been when we returned. And eventually I realized I could not go back to engineering. I had to find something else, but I had really enjoyed teaching. When I homeschooled, I'd actually created a science program. I used to work with children. I used to teach science to children in a homeschool co-op. And when I was in France, I taught a science activity. So I thought I was really interested in doing some kind of teaching, tutoring, but I had a hard time figuring out what it would be. And eventually I took a volunteer internship on a political campaign and ended up coaching the congressional candidate for her television appearances and a debate. And I found out I was actually really good at that. Everything I'd learned about teaching and how students learned when I had been homeschooling applied to helping adults learn too. And I was able to identify her learning style and work with her, was very successful, and thought, maybe this is the direction I should be heading. So I actually went that way and started advertising and deciding that I would try to give public speaking coaching a go at it. And turned out, as I mentioned, I was actually good at it, which gave me more encouragement to keep going. And 5 years later, I'm still going.
And you're going to keep going. I'm very
Yes,
sure.
and I plan to keep going as well.
Yep. So, can you tell us all, like, how do you plan your lessons? Yeah.
Sure, that's a good question there, because that's a process that has really evolved over time. When I first started, I looked at everything as one lesson, and then we had another lesson, and I didn't really create a flow to what I was doing. Over time, I realized that it just wasn't working as well as it could have. I knew that I could come up with a process. I don't like to call it a program because it is very individualized, but a process where I had a flow to things. So I spent some time writing down all the exercises I had created, all the homework assignments, everything, and kind of organized them. And so now I have this process. First, we work on this one area. Everyone needs to build good speaking habits, and that's the foundation. So we work on that, addressing the confidence, and then I move them into the content. And depending on their needs, I pick and choose from the different exercises and activities and homework. but I keep that same flow going. First the habits, then the content, and then there's additional practice until they are feeling really confident. So my lesson planning is still a little loose, but it's with the end goal and that process in mind.
Have you ever felt that the lesson plans, whenever we plan something, you'll feel that it's always something is left that there is something less to perfection and I need to learn more. I need to get it done perfectly. Have you also felt that thing?
Yes, I also suffer from that. What I have done is convince myself through a group coaching program I went through to address this, that 80% is the new 100%. That there is a point at which your 80% in an area in which you're an expert is actually really, really good. I know that there's that extra little bit that would get me to 100%, but for my students to reach their goals, 80% of what I know, 80% of that perfection is enough to get them where they need to be.
Something new that I learned today. 80% is the new 100%.
Mhm.
Yep. And some people also call it as imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome. Yeah. Initially, as you said, you train adults. So when I started tutoring online, before I used to go to people's home as a home tutor, offline tutor. And when I transitioned, because here there was a strict lockdown and nobody could get out of their house because of COVID-19. So I was having no other work to do. And I had to figure out ways like how am I going to earn my bread and butter. So I just thought, learned many things about this online world, how it actually works and everything. Or to be frank, I was not able to have the confidence to turn on my camera for the first 6 months of my tutoring. So I got in touch with people like you. There was also group coaching sessions. So they encouraged me to turn it on, and I just realized it's okay. It doesn't feel much now, even if the camera is on or off. We can say that I got a little bit camera friendly after getting some counseling. So training the professionals is really very important because they are going to one that are going to impart their knowledge to the students.
Mhm.
So the job you are doing, it's actually awesome. I would actually admire and would love to do that if I'm capable to do it in some years, of course.
Yes, and good for you for just taking the first step and having the courage to just turn it on, because oftentimes that's what it takes as a tutor, is just getting over that hesitation and taking that first step. I can tell you the first time I did an online lesson, I was also very, very nervous because I had only been doing this in person. You just have to take that leap of faith sometimes and tell yourself, it's going to be okay. I will learn from this no matter what happens. And that learning is my goal. And just go with it from there. And good things can come from that for sure, as you have found.
Yeah. Just to complement what you have said, the motto of my organization is Jnanam Param Dhyam. It's a Sanskrit word, we can say slogan, which means knowledge is the ultimate goal.
Love
So,
that. I love that.
even if you see our motto, our logo, under that it is written in Sanskrit, Jnanam Param Dhyam. So knowledge is the ultimate goal. And whatever happens, it's not like few people say that, and I love that the most. Like we never lose. We either win or we learn. So
Mhm.
I love that sentence. I've heard it so many people say it that way. And it's awesome to hear that. Now, Coming to the next question,
Mhm.
how do you make your day productive? Because I have seen that the life of a tutorpreneur is very lonely. How do you make it productive?
You just touched a nerve with me on that. As far as being lonely, it is really easy for me personally to get distracted by things like laundry because I'm sitting at home and I might have an hour in between sessions. So I can go take care of laundry. I can maybe vacuum. I can catch up on Facebook. But as you said, it's all solitary activities. And I'm here alone in this corner of the room for many hours. And it's easy to get into bad habits. That's actually something I am working on changing right now. So I am changing the way I organize my days. I am trying to get out of the house more. I just recently joined a local mastermind group. It's actually called We Connect, which I like that idea. It's with other women solo entrepreneurs. We meet up in person once a month. So that gets me out of the house. It gets me connecting to people. I've also joined some online groups, support groups, and trying to connect with people online. I've got an accountability partner through one of them. She's in the UK, I'm in the US, and once a week we get together. We go over our progress for that week and we state our goals for the following week. So I am in the process of organizing my days a little bit differently so that they involve more interaction with other non-students throughout the day. So I'm trying to get into a routine now where I do get up in the morning and maybe get some of that housework done earlier, get the lesson planning for the day done, get through the lessons that day, but make sure that throughout the week, there is that interaction with others.
Well, I am also trying to do the same thing. I was thinking to shift my office from, let's say, a solitary place to a place where a lot of people live.
I'm actually considering a membership to a co-working space that is going to be opening up that's only going to be about 10-15 minutes from my house so that I can, again, have a reason to get out and engage with other non-students throughout the day. It's good to have that peer engagement. It really can be very, very helpful, honestly.
Really very helpful also. And there are many things like, let's say, we underestimate ourselves. I personally underestimate myself a lot. And there, when we meet our friends or people around us, sometimes you realize that you have done a lot of things by talking to people. Now, when I sit alone, it's just, I ask this question because I personally am finding answers to this. When I sit alone sometimes, I feel, oh, what is that I have done so special? Because it is everyday task for me. Let's say taking classes, getting to know people. I don't consider this a lot of things because it's everyday course for me. And when suddenly it happens like once in a week, or let's say 10 days, once in 10 days, I feel very low about myself. Let's say, oh, what is that I want to do? Then I actually try finding the purpose of life.
You get inside your own head because you only have yourself to talk to. And so you have these conversations in your head. I think we can all identify with that.
Yep. Like I was going through existential crisis the last week. I'm trying to come out from it. And this new year, actually, it's your first interview that we are recording for the 2022. I think it's a very good start for this year. So coming to the next question, like when you started, what were the reactions of your clients and your colleagues?
When I first started, I can't say that I had colleagues at the time because I was pretty much not working at the time. I had worked, the internship that I had mentioned with the political candidate had ended. So I didn't really have any colleagues, but I did have friends and family, and they were very supportive. I was pleasantly surprised by how supportive everyone was. It took me a while to get my first students, but they actually surprised me a little bit that they were very receptive and open to trying the exercises I had for them. They were very positive about the interactions we had. I think that really kept me going because at that point, I didn't have the attitude of learning. As you had said, I had a little bit more self-doubt and more of that in my head going that you just mentioned. So I think it's really good that at the beginning, I did get very positive feedback from my first students.
Yeah, that's now, as you said, uh, you have had many students till now. So there is always some student, or many of them are actually close to our heart. And there is something magical change that has happened only because of the tutoring and the support given by that particular tutor. So is there some story you would like to share with us about your student?
Oh gosh, I've got so many success stories with my students, and I love it because they make me feel good to know I'm making a difference. I had one student last year. He's my biggest success story, I can say personally. He came to me terrified to present on Zoom, just absolutely terrified. We worked on it. And one day he got to the point where he was watching back a recording of himself. And he just told me, he said, I can't believe that's me, because he looked good. He had developed this presence. People were listening to him. He ended up going just above and beyond. He adopted this attitude of being fearless. He was going to speak up. He was going to say what was on his mind because he knew that he had good ideas. He went through this at work, and towards the end of working with him, he came on one day and told me that he had gotten promoted. He was now, I believe, at a vice president position. The promotion he was awarded came with $1 million of stock options. And told him I wasn't charging him enough money at that point, but I was so proud of him. So that is an unusual success that one of my students has had. But I've had a lot of students who have had just that personal success. They get this sense of pride in their work and seeing themselves present. I've had people who've been terrified who have had to go on and be the face of their brand. They've had to do interviews and podcasts. They're terrified to do it, but in the end, they're like, I did pretty good. Or just even when the student who tells me that they gave a product demo for the first time. I remember this one student, she's coming to my mind. She came to me, she's like, I gave my first product demo, and I got messages afterwards from the people in the room about what a great job I did. And those are the stories that keep me going because I know I am positively impacting my students' lives.
Awesome. And can you now honestly tell me, how did you feel when the students you taught, you mentored, were doing so excellent in their field? What was your feeling at that time?
I guess I feel pride. I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of my students too, but that carries over into proud of myself for being able to make that difference and have that impact. It's also motivating. It's
Yeah.
what gives me the ability to keep going after and doing the parts of the business I don't like as much. So you have to keep track of your finances. All those other things aren't the fun parts. The working with students is the fun part, but that gives me the motivation to get that other stuff done. sometimes that's what it takes.
Yeah. And that is the reason most of the teachers still keep teaching. They still keep impacting lives.
Mhm.
And it is the most awesome feeling, which I think only a mentor, only a teacher has the pleasure to understand it or pleasure to know about it.
Yeah, and it is really good. And the other thing is that you can see the impact you have directly with these students, which is great. I actually got a note around Christmas time from a student that I hadn't seen in months and months. We had ended our time together. He had reached his goals. He sent me a note that he was looking back on 2021 and reflecting on his year and wanted to let me know that he kept thinking about what a positive impact I had made on his 2021.
That actually has feeling from both the ends. Now, I have also done it the otherwise. Like, I call my teachers now also, like those who have impacted my life, and it actually is an awesome feeling for the student to share, and it is even more awesome for the teacher to listen. Okay,
Yes,
good.
yes. And I'm sure you probably have got that type of feedback, and you've had that success story from your students as well. So you've been in both places, you know exactly what you're talking about there.
It's like fresh memory. Yep. So now, talking about this, are there some difficulties that you faced in your tutorpreneur journey?
Yes, there have been. I would say the pandemic was actually simultaneously a bad thing and a good thing for me, because I had been doing some in-person coaching. I had been doing some classes. I had been doing that. I was comfortable with it. I had started online, but the online portion wasn't a big part of what I was doing. So all of a sudden, I didn't have any in-person classes. I know you mentioned it earlier. You've been through that same thing. So all of a sudden, I had to ramp up the online portion. I had to convince everyone that even though they may live only 20 minutes away from me, that we had to go online. That was a little bit difficult for me to convince these people for something like public speaking coaching, that we could do it online and still be successful. So that was definitely a little bit of a challenge for me, as well as just as you said, the isolation. The pandemic brought upon isolation. So that was difficult for me as someone who had been going out and working with these people. I'd had a regular networking group that I'd been part of locally. So I lost all of that. At the same time, the pandemic ended up being a good thing because I focused entirely on the online part of what I was doing, and I was able to grow it, to really grow it to the point where now I haven't gone back to any of the in-person tutoring or working as well. So it did end up working out okay, although there was that moment of panic when I realized I was going to lose all the in-person.
We can relate to so many things. Like when the pandemic hit, I was like not sure that what I am going to do with my life. Like I was a very social person. Means I used to go talk to people. I used to like socializing a lot. Then students were there every day. I used to tutor around, let's say, 3 hours or 4 hours. And then my previous job was an aero modeling trainer. So I was always in touch of kids. In this daytime, I used to teach like hundreds and hundreds of kids at the same time. It was a classroom coaching where I used to go. And in the evening, I used to do part-time home tutoring. So when the pandemic hit, I was the one who would run away from computers. I did not personally believe that someone could even learn from online. Then, then I started revolving around, and I can say proudly that what I started with, my business has grown 5x times. Like in 1 year only, it's 5 times, and I'm completely booked. I have my staffs booking up right now also. Means I'm booking their hours as well. So we can relate to that. Now, coming to the next question. Did you ever feel like giving up?
I have. There have been those moments where you feel like giving up. The first one I had was after my first year, which was a learning experience. When I did my taxes and I realized just how little money I'd actually made that first year. And you sit down and you look at it and you're like, wait a second, I spent all that time and this is all I have to show for it. I learned a lot from that in itself, just that I needed to have more of a business plan and actually look at profit. I know that a lot of tutors are similar to me in that they're doing this and they're motivated primarily by helping others. We like doing it. We like seeing other people succeed. We're good at it. We're caring. And that's a big motivator. But we're not doing this just as a hobby. This is actually a job. We need to focus a little bit more on that financial piece. Otherwise, you do end up spending hours upon hour just doing this and pouring your heart and soul into it. And then you realize, I'm doing all this and I'm barely making any money. So that was a wake-up call to me. Rather than give up at that point, I realized I needed to take the business portion of it a lot more seriously. I needed to get a plan. And I sat down and I wrote out an income goal. And then I looked, okay, at my hourly rate, how many hours a week would I have to tutor or work with people in order to get it? What other sources of income might there be? And really plan. And I think that was something I didn't do at all the first year. Any type of planning, I didn't even track my expenses very well or track my income very well that first year. So it was a turning point for me for sure.
Please explain the planning process a bit more exclusively, or let's say paying, because let's say I am at that position where I am feeling I should start planning about my business now. And there are certainly so many people who may be in the same stage as I am right now. So can you please explain the planning process a bit more clearly?
Sure. For me, it was something I had to learn from others as well. This isn't a process that I invented myself. I actually ended up joining a plan-a-thon Facebook challenge one time where we were challenged to write it out. I also took a course offered by a local small business development center near me by an accountant because I realized I needed to pay more attention to the finances. And he had some really great advice that I've incorporated as well. So for me, the planning process has involved writing out a vision statement. Actually, what size business do I have? Where am I going with this? Because it's one thing to think about where you are right now, but if you want to grow and expand and get to a certain point, it really helps to write it out and say it out loud even. But then I set an income goal. I also set other goals. Are there things I want to learn this year? One of my goals for this year is to connect with people more, to get out of the house. As we had talked about the co-working, I joined just recently that We Connect group. So those kinds of things are also listed in my goals. But then when it comes to the financial goal, I write out what are all my expenses going to be this year. Think about having the G Suite subscription, Zoom, all of those types of things that I'm going to spend money on. Then I look at where's my income coming from. I do some group classes. Okay, if I do group classes, I make this much an hour. How many of those do I think I'm going to do this year? How many students a week am I going to do? And then you look, okay, what if I raise my rate an extra $5, $10 this year? And maybe I raise it only for new students. What's that going to be? And I start looking at how I'm going to reach that income goal, and also how I'm going to do it without working 50, 60 hours a week. But that is really the basic process for me, is writing it all down, setting a goal. Then I keep track of it. That was a big mistake I made early on, was not really tracking what I was bringing in. That can have serious implications for taxes here in the United States. I learned that I came this close to having to pay an IRS penalty for not having properly prepaid estimated taxes. So those are also part of my planning process. I keep track of what my income is, and I make sure that on the appropriate dates, I pay the IRS my estimated taxes based off the income I have just earned in that quarter. So I am getting a lot better with the planning. As I mentioned, it took some coaching. I had to have some help along the way, but that's really what the process looks like for me right now.
Wonderful insight about planning. So I would just like to ask one or two more questions on the same topic. So do you plan it like you go in the reverse method, like you set a goal for a year, then you break it down into months, then into weeks, and then you figure out what is going to be your daily target? How does it go? Or it's a reverse?
I don't break it down quite that much. It's more along the lines of, okay, this is my target. If I have group classes and I do this many group classes, this much income will come from the group classes. Then I back out, okay, if I do one-on-ones, I need to average this many lessons per week. I don't break it down to a day. I look at things more weekly as far as number of hours that I'm working each week. And I set a target. Okay, maybe I need to be at 23 hours a week to reach that income goal. And I track weekly. Some weeks are higher than others, and get that monthly average then. That's what goes into the bigger financial planning, as far as especially the taxes, is then that monthly income. But I have a target for weekly number of students.
How often do you track?
Did you say how often do I track?
Yeah, how often do you track these numbers? Like weekly or 15
Well,
days?
I always know how many students I have each week. That is something that I track constantly, just taking account, like I'll pull up my calendar on my phone on the weekend and say, okay, next week I've got this many students already scheduled. Okay, great. Or I start looking, okay, I have finished up with students. Because I work with adults, public speaking, I don't work with them for years. They're mostly with me short term. So sometimes I will look and say, okay, I'm finishing up with these 3-4 students. I need to do an advertising push because I'm going to be low in a week or two. So I will be tracking and I'll realize, oh, yeah, it's time to get some new students. I better push some ads out there.
And I would say that you have pushed some ads out there. So can you let me know, like, what mediums do you use to push your ad and what actually works for you to get more students?
Sure. I use Craigslist here in the United States to get students. That's been pretty successful for me. I also have had some success that has surprised me the first time it happened through LinkedIn. I have tried to be more productive on posting and being selective about what I'm doing on LinkedIn. And it surprised me that I've had several students contact me through LinkedIn. Though I also have a Facebook group. I've recently started Instagram. I am slowly building on Instagram. I don't have very many followers on that yet. Haven't put a lot on there, but I have actually made as part of my goals for 2022 that I am going to grow my Instagram following and try to hit targeting students on Instagram this year. I'm also working on improving my social selling index on LinkedIn because I want to use those two more for sources. I do have one other source for students, which I don't advertise on, though I am registered with an agency. I still get a few students coming through that. I want to end my association with that, but it's still nice to have the extra students.
Yeah. Basically, I feel that we are going to do one more interview session with you regarding learning the tactics of sales which you apply in your business. So I hope that's fine with you.
That's fine. And I will tell you again, that's something you talk about, how the goal is always to learn. I love to learn. I have taken other classes. I have done other programs in order to learn a little bit more of the marketing, because that is something that I did not do well with when I first started out. I made a lot of mistakes along the way with regards to the marketing piece, for sure.
Yeah. And one more beautiful thing about knowledge is that when you share, it grows.
Mhm.
Like, let's say any other thing, like if there is money, if I have 10 bucks in my pocket and if I give it to someone, so 10 bucks just reduced from my pocket. But if I share some knowledgeable thing with some other person, actually it grows. It even grows while we are explaining it to them. Like, yeah.
Yes, actually, that is something that I firmly believe in. If you're not familiar with the term abundance mentality, you're familiar with it. That's something that was a switch for me that I think really, really helped me, is this idea that when I network with other entrepreneurs, when I join these online tutor support groups and we share information with each other, we're helping build the profession as a whole rather than competing and taking away from each other. And that the better the reputation of online tutoring, the better off we all are. So making other tutors stronger actually benefits you as well.
And that is also a saying which I love a lot. Competition is for losers.
Oh, I like that. I've not heard that one before. Competition is for losers. I like it.
And collaboration is where the winners are made. By collaboration, we may become a winner.
Yeah.
I think I should write it somewhere on the wall.
I've got my vision board actually right over there, and I need to update it for 2022. I might have to add some of those phrases to it as well. Mm-hmm.
So we can say that collaborating is always better than competition, because you must have seen many people who don't have a broad mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know why they do it, but we can just see when there is not abundance mentality, like if they don't want to share, it's not going to grow. Okay, at this stage they think it's going okay, but after a certain stage, there people are going to grow, they're going to know more things, and if we don't share, obviously people are not going to share anything with us. So that is where the person who is not having the abundance mentality, I think lacks to succeed in the long run.
I would agree with that.
Now, what is something that you would like a tutorpreneur who is entering in the field right now? Two things which you want to tell them they should not do, and two things what you would like them to do.
Oh, it's easier just to focus on the what you should do, make them a little bit more positive. But I would say one of the things you should not do is undervalue yourself. I think a lot of people go in with the idea of, well, I'm just starting out. I should price myself a little bit lower to reflect that. But you are probably not coming into this with no knowledge. You're coming into this with experience and expertise that you need to value. So I would say don't undervalue yourself. The other thing I would say not to do is not to get discouraged. Or not even, maybe I should change that to not to be afraid. Like you said, that take that first step, turn on the camera, throw yourself out there. So don't be afraid. I'm going to change it to don't be afraid. So those would be the two things I would say not to do. Then as far as, oh, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to interrupt you there. So version 1 is always better than version none.
Yes, yes, that is true. So don't be afraid to take that first step towards things. So, and then the two things to do. One, I would say, getting to that marketing piece that I made mistakes at and I learned about, one is to communicate the value, the results you get, and not focus on your qualifications. Because too many people are just, I am this person. And people are like, well, good, I'm glad you are, rather than I can help you do this. So I think that would be a piece I would tell people to do. And then the other one that I talked about is plan. Actually, plan and track, because it has made a big difference in the success that I have had in even just making sure that I don't end up having to pay the penalty to the IRS, in even growing my income. I mean, as I said, that first year I made like nothing, and now I'm doing really well. But it wasn't until I had a plan for doing well that I was able to do well.
And you said that you should not undervalue yourself. Like, what if some client comes and their budget is less than what you charge for? How do you deal with those clients?
So I have a couple things that I do for those clients. There are some clients that I honestly will feel a connection with, feel like I can help and say, okay, I believe that they aren't able to do this. I have on occasion lowered my rates. I actually do take pro bono students. That's one of the things about getting to the point where I am now, is given me the freedom to be able to take on one pro bono student at a time. So I have that as an option. The other thing you can do is refer them to someone else who doesn't charge as much, or try to find a group class for someone, so that if you have that person that you don't feel you can lower your rates for, make sure that there's an option for them.
Actually, an awesome thing. Like, if we cannot help, let's find the best option for them to get their help. Yeah. Now, coming to the next question. So, as you said, you are a solopreneur right now. So, are you thinking to grow a team with you?
So,
And which are all okay? Please continue.
oh, well, yes, I am not thinking about a big team. I don't think that I want to have a big business. I know you've talked about your situation and you do have that team. What has happened for me is I used to do a lot more with younger students. I used to do some etiquette classes with them. I used to do some coaching with them, some interview coaching, even 8th graders who were trying to interview for prestigious private high schools. As I have picked up more and more of the adult students, I've gravitated towards doing work with them exclusively. They're available during business hours. It has made my life a lot easier. It's given me more time with my family if I'm not dealing with student schedules where it has to be evenings or weekends. So I still get a lot of requests for classes and working with younger students, and I just don't have the time to take that on right now. Every time I get an inquiry for a younger student, I always respond and tell them that I don't have the time for them. I explain that I had to change during the pandemic. I don't have the time to add the children back in, but I am looking for someone else to take over that part of my business. If you or someone you know would be interested in it, let me know, because I'm hoping that when I send that out, it will spark something and somebody will say, oh yeah, my neighbor wants to get into this. And then I can bring someone in to take over the younger student portion. The other thing I think, as far as team goes, though, we could look at it a little bit differently. I do think as I grow, I would like to perhaps get a social media manager or somebody very, very part-time, maybe contract. I don't know that I don't know if you would consider that part of the team, but I think I would eventually like to get some help in that area. And so I guess you could call that grow my team.
Yep. Actually, a good idea to scaling up. Yeah, we can say this is how you are going to scale up the business, right? Yep. So coming to the last question, what is some advice that you would like to give someone who is just entering or struggling in tutoring industry?
Well, I know we just went over the advice, the two things I would say not to do and the two things to do. So
Okay.
I think I would just reiterate the don't undervalue yourself, don't underestimate yourself, and just take that first step, because I've been there. I think we all have. It is a little bit nerve-wracking the first time you decide to say, hey, I'm offering lessons. It's like, okay, let's see how this goes, but you got to take that first step.
Yeah. Because version 1 is always better than version none.
Yes.
And if there is some student or professional who might think that they need your help, so can you let us know how can they contact you, your website or email address?
Sure. My website is Queen City Etiquette, and they can email me at dina@qcetiquette.com. I'm also on Facebook as Queen City Etiquette. I live in Cincinnati, whose nickname is the Queen City. As I said, I got the start doing in person, so using that Queen City name was a good thing then. I am hoping to pivot and change the name to Presenting Confidence. I haven't launched a new website with that, but I am on Instagram as Presenting Confidence.
Yeah. So I will surely link all the details in the description of this YouTube video so that people who want to reach to you correctly.
Right. They
So
can DM me on Instagram, email me, or even message me through Facebook. Any of those will be fine.
yeah. So it was a very knowledgeable interview, Dina. And I
It
would
was a
say
pleasure,
that
Vivek.
it was a very awesome start for this 2022.
Oh, great.
And we are going to have one more interview very soon. We'll be discussing about the sales and all. So I hope you won't mind it.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you so much. Have a great day
Thank
ahead.
you. You too.